Okay, so we're going to cover two things today, okay? The first one is dealing with a couple of changes that are coming with Docs Plus, Remine, and some stuff within FMLS. And then we're going to expand on a topic that was brought up in the Thursday huddle that is made even more important by Greg's huddle yesterday, okay? So first off, has anybody seen when you go into Remine Docs Plus, the notice about your NRDS number? Yes. Okay, has anybody had trouble with it?
Mine showed up again.
It showed up again. You might have to do it one last time, but the issue is your NRDS, your otherwise known as your NERDS number, is the number that allows you access to GAR document forms. Okay, so in order for Remine and Docs Plus to know that you have access to it, you have to enter your NERDS number. NRDS number, it stands for National Real Estate Database System, I think. But it's commonly known as your NERDS number, which always makes me think, Urkel. So think about it however you want to, all right? But in order, if I literally was helping an agent, a call came into the broker hotline, for some reason I can't get to my GAR forms, all right? If you ever need to do that, I'm going to show you very, very quickly within Remine how you access this information. So you're within your main Remine docs, your dashboard, you go down here to settings, and you see this settings, your GAR, FPIN, or NRDS number is blank, okay? You may have it in there, but something they did at the first of the year required you to confirm it, okay? In which case, if you still don't have access to it, you can simply hit change, come up here, hit the space bar, your confirm number is gonna be right there, and you just simply mash confirm, and you're in. Jay Willard, you have access until the end of this year, okay? So you may have to only do this once, you may have to do it again at the beginning of next year, okay? Make sense? All right. So that is one thing. The other thing that is coming down the pike, and I tried to get a visual on this, but I actually had printed it out even before. Everybody uses the Matrix portal to set your clients up on auto emails, or at least that's what I've taught 99% of you guys how to do. There is a new Matrix portal coming out. You probably saw that notice come across too. I did watch the video that they were like, I'm trying to see if I can see any more information. It was more of a marketing promotional type video. It didn't give me any details on what it looks like. But it does say the current Matrix portal is being upgraded to a new exciting one home product. Sounds like it's super feature rich and everything is going to be hunky-dory. As with anything, there's always growing pains with this one. When it comes out, of course, you're going to hear it from me. We'll probably do a little demo just so everybody's familiar with it and knows what's coming down the pike. All right? Any questions on that? Okay. What happened? Who here was here for Greg's meeting yesterday on interest rates? Okay. So catch the rest of us up to speed. What's going on? What happened?
Treasurer notes went way up and interest rates went up 0.5%.
Yep, they did indeed. I printed something out and I brought it in here. I've got a handout for y'all. Manuela, will you go grab it off of, I think it might be still on my desk. It's a conventional loan exhibit. There's a stack of about 20 of them. Apologies for that, folks. So yes, interest rates, the T-bill has gone up for the highest amount in the last couple of years, okay, since 2020. And it all happened within 1 week, okay? Greg's illustration was somebody that he had pre-qualified and was told that they could get it at 2.5 or 2.75. Now all of a sudden they're much higher and they may have a problem qualifying for that loan, okay? We have to lead turn that and try to prevent that from being the case, all right? So we touched on this briefly on Thursday last week. This was a problem that we were seeing even before And now it's become even worse. Are y'all looking?
Yes.
Okay, why is my red stuff is not showing on here? That's interesting.
Would you like one of them?
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I think it has to do with I have to tell it to show the edits and all that kind of stuff. Well, so what I did is I created a cheat sheet for everybody. All right. So what you want to pay attention to, glad I got my little pointer, is you always want to have a value in on the interest rate within the conventional loan exhibit. Same applies for VA and FHA. All right. So it must be filled in with a value. If you're the buyer's agent, you need to fill it in, and you need to put the appropriate interest rate. Okay. And we're going to have another conversation stand by about what that number looks like. Okay. But you never want to see TBD or market or anything that is vague in nature. If you leave that blank, this becomes a what contract? Voidable. Okay, it's voidable. It's not void. It can be voided, and without a good attorney would immediately say, "Yep, that's not complete. It is a voidable contract." All right. Now, the number that you want to put in there. All right. The language that it refers to is down in paragraph 3, and I've highlighted it for you down here. And I wish my highlights would come up on this screen, but basically it is right there. A loan denial letter, as that term is defined below, must be for the loans described above. All right? So the reason why it is so important to put a value there is because a loan denial may be dependent upon what number is put right there. Okay, so let's use the example that Greg brought up last week. Somebody that qualified for the mortgage 3 months ago, 6 months ago, qualified at 2.5. That you can't lock in an interest rate until you have a contract. So they're now going to lock in, and they might be at 3.5. It's gone up an entire point since then for their particular situation. If they had 2.5 right there, the language down below that says a loan denial letter must be for the loans described above. All right. So now they want to do a loan denial because they don't want to pay 3.5. They may be able to, they may not be able to, but the fact that there's a number up there that is lower than what they can actually qualify for means that they have an option to submit a loan denial letter, get out of their contract, and get their earnest money back. Okay? If you had left that blank and put TBD, or you didn't put anything in there, or you had put a higher number in there, then you couldn't use the loan denial letter to be able to get your client out of the contract. Does everybody follow that? You now have options.
So they'd be locked in pretty much if you wouldn't have put anything else in.
Exactly. Yep. So basically, what you do with that number depends on which side of the equation you're on. Okay. So if you're representing a buyer, you want to consider using a low rate, actually close to the par. Because if it comes in higher, you want your client to be able to have the option to get out. Okay? If you're representing the seller, on the other hand, do you want the buyer to have an option to get out? Of course not. Okay? So in that case, you want that to be higher, maybe even above what the par rate, going rate is, so that you then leave a little bit of a cushion for the economics of the uncertain times that we live in, and interest rates going up, and the Fed's efforts to counter inflation, adjusting the interest rates and things like that. You want to be able to provide a cushion, so you want to do a higher number there. Make sense? basically the listing agent or the buyer's agent, whoever's submitting the contract will do this.
Well,
Matt.
say the seller wants in there, the listing agent wants in there, but the buyer's agent is the one who actually fills it out.
True,
So it's
but
listing
when you're
agent
negotiating,
looking
when you're negotiating the contract, you can always counter back. I've had somebody counter back on an interest rate
at- Okay.
before. Matt,
With that interest rate, and this may be a silly question, I know you're saying, whatever side of the deal you're on, you need to pick a number. Are you legitimately just doing that? You're just picking an interest rate number? Or is there something you're basing that off of?
you should be basing that off of what you should be having a conversation with the loan officer. Whoever gave you the pre-approval, pre-qualification letter, if you're stuck and you don't know exactly a lot of times they don't even put an interest rate on there,
Right.
in which case you're left to kind of guess. So my strongest recommendation is before you sit down and you draft this, call the lender. Okay, so here's where we're at. We're about to write an offer. Looks like it's going to be this sales price. Talk to me about the interest rate. What should I put in there? Talk to me about the financing contingency. Is 21 days enough? Is the appraisal contingency enough at 21 days? Can you shorten that at all? This should be something that you do in collaboration with that loan officer.
Okay.
Okay, Jessica
If-
first.
If you're the listing agent and you want to ask them to change the rate, would you first have a conversation with the lender to get an idea of, like, hey, are they close at this interest rate? Like, so you can get.
Probably not a bad idea.
And then before you ask them to.
Yep.
Okay.
I would probably start with the listing agent first
Okay,
if you're countering it.
got it.
And then we'll your question.
Under approved mortgage lenders, can you put in there to be determined instead of leaving it blank?
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay?
I didn't hear Jessica's question. I'm sorry.
She said if you were countering, would you contact the buyer's lender or would you just contact the listing agent? I answered
Yeah,
that.
basically to see where they're at with that.
Okay?
What did you say?
I would probably start with the listing agent. Actually, one of these paragraphs talks about giving you the authority to talk to the buyer's lender about certain things. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. The provision says guarantee the mortgage loan. Wouldn't you know it when you're standing in front of a group of people, you can't find what you were looking for? Well, let me get back to you on that one. Okay, I don't want to waste everybody's time. So her question was on the approved mortgage lender. That's why I highlighted this paragraph on the cheat sheet that you've got. Unless an approved mortgage lender is identified below, buyer may apply for approval of the loans with any institutional lender licensed to do business in Georgia. Okay? If an approved mortgage lender is identified below, buyer shall apply for approval of the loan with at least one such approved mortgage lender. Nothing herein shall require the buyer to obtain a mortgage financing from an approved mortgage lender. Okay? So in other words, you're better off to leave that blank. I wouldn't even put, if you're representing the buyer, you want it blank. Okay? Because you want the option to get a loan denial letter from any of these. That's the next part down here. A loan denial letter must be for the loan described above. Buyer may apply for different conventional loans than the loan described above. However, the denial of such other loans shall not be a basis for the buyer to terminate this agreement. Okay? So if you're representing the buyer, you always want to leave that blank. If you're representing the seller, what do you want it to do?
You filled out.
You want a name in there. Okay? So I would counter with that. You would never make a change on this and add that in there. Okay? You had somebody do that. unless you're sneaky and deceptive and try to do that. Yeah, that was an experience Manuela had. Okay, Tom.
And that can be tricky if your buyer, let's say you put Quicken in there and then they talk to Greg and get a better rate and go with Greg, and then something happens down the line.
Right.
You don't have, you get a denial letter from Greg, but he's not on there.
But he's not on there, in which case, if they terminate,
In trouble.
they're in trouble and they're going to lose their earnest money more than likely. Okay?
So do you always leave that blank?
If I'm a buyer, if I'm representing the buyer, I always leave it blank.
Do they come back a lot?
Once in a while.
Once in a while? Okay.
And if they do, you know you're dealing with an agent that has been well educated and has a brokerage that with a good training program, because they're getting spoon-fed the information just like you are. Okay?
Does it come off shady at all to not do it, or,
No,
okay, just wondering.
no.
Or if you do write somebody and change, just make sure you amend it right. All parties
Yep.
agree the new lender shall be.
Yep. I have seen First Community Mortgage or any other lender of the buyer's choosing. I agree. Just leave it blank.
Yeah.
Why specify? Okay. We are trained as agents to never leave something blank. We always want every box filled in, and if it's not filled in, we want N/A not applicable. This would be the one exception to the rule, all because of this language right here, unless an approved mortgage lender is identified below. It's tricky wording and tricky language, but it's applicable in this situation. All right?
Yes.
That's all I got for y'all. Let's go to work.